Hey everyone, Tactics here, and with Dragonflight just a few short weeks away, you need to figure out what tank spec you're going to main in the very first patch. So in this video, I'll be giving you guys a quick rundown of all 6 tank specs, highlighting some of their strengths, weaknesses, and the unique utility that they all bring. If you're looking for something a bit more in-depth, I have individual videos on each tank spec over on my channel, which I'll link also in the description below, and I'll also be putting out full tank rankings and comparison video in a couple weeks time when all that balancing is finished and we're closer to launch. So be sure you guys do subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so you do not miss when that gets posted. With that said, I do want to start by saying that tank balance right now is actually very solid, especially again after the buffs that happened just this past week. Every tank spec for sure is viable in the vast majority of all content, whether you're trying to do plus 20 keys for your box, whether you're trying to mythic raid at a CE level. Every single tank spec will be able to accomplish that, so do not forget about that buff that you get for playing the class or spec that you enjoy the most. Now, let's start off with the reigning kings of tanks from Shadowlands, the Blood Death Knight. While they certainly aren't the force that they were in Season 3 and Season 4 of Shadowlands, Blood DKs remain the single tankiest tank in the game with unparalleled self-sustain and multiple small defensive CDs to kind of get them through any single bad situation you can think of. The Infinite Dancing Rune Weapon extension playstyle is gone, and in its place is something more focused around maintaining and standing inside of your Death and Decay, interactions with your Blood Plague, and consistently using Death Strike to maintain multiple short duration buffs. DKs still have their insane mob control, and they now have access to both 2 charges of that extended range Death Grip, as well as the Necrolord Covenant ability Abomination's Limb, and of course you cannot forget about Gorfriem's Grasp, though do note that that ability does take a bit of a sacrifice on the Blood DK's part to obtain, but regardless, all of these tools are invaluable for grouping up those pesky ranged and caster mobs, both in dungeons and raid. They also do bring, of course, Anti-Magic Zone, the biggest because it scales off max HP of all Death Knights, as well as the brand new attack speed debuff, Insidious Chill. Pretty much the only spot that Blood DK was lacking was actually an AoE damage, but that was addressed this past week with some buffs that also actually gave them a decent single target boost as well. So when you combine all of that with their fantastic durability, it makes them pretty close to the full tank package. Next up, we've got the Brewmaster Monk, and if absolutely blasting damage is your thing, then this is the tank for you. Currently, Brews are the best tank at pumping out that AoE damage by a significant margin, and honestly, their single target's nothing to scoff at either. It's way up there. When it comes to the number of tools that this tank spec has, Brewmaster is just unmatched. They have a button for every single situation, like being able to grab both Diffuse Magic and Dampen Harm, both Bone Dust Brew and Weapons of Order, both Exploding Keg and Rushing Jade Wind. There's just a lot of active abilities that previously all competed with each other that you can now have all at the same time. And while some might say that this makes the spec feel a tad bit bloated, if you like having a different button for any possible scenario, then this is the tank for you. They of course come with that Mystic Touch physical raid debuff, extremely important to have at least one of in your raid group, and while they lack any major raid cooldowns, they have a lot of smaller utility tools like Tiger's Lust, Ring of Peace, Black Ox Statue that can all be very strong in different situations. While they have that fantastic damage, they are a bit lacking on the durability front compared to their fellow tanks, particularly when facing magic damage that they aren't able to fully stagger off. This does make them kind of feel a bit like a glass cannon, but like I said, if you're able to outplay being squishier, you will be rewarded with significant damage. Then we've got Protection Paladin, the utility monsters. If you like helping out your teammates, whether that be from throwing out off heals, providing immunities with Blessing of Protection or Spell Warding, or if that's too much, the 30% DR and Blessing of Sacrifice, which now can be reduced to a 1-minute cooldown, by the way, then this is the tank spec for you. Paired with their damage reduction raid buff, Devotion Aura, they support their raid and party like no other tank. Avenger's Shield can't be forgotten either, and while it no longer generates holy power, it still has that very strong silence attached to it, making them a strong choice for tank players that pug a lot and want to be able to carry those kicks in Mythic Plus. Paladins also have some fun returning abilities in Dragonflight, with the Divine Toll and Divine Resonance combo remaining an option, as well as Bulwark of the Righteous Fury, Eye of Tyr, Mad Paragon, and even of Dusk and Dawn. They also gained the ability to battle res, though this does cost you 3 holy power currently, which feels a bit rough. When it comes to damage and durability, Paladins are much more well balanced than the two previously mentioned spec, though they also have to make much more impactful decisions in their tree when it comes to choosing between the two, like the choice between Sentinel and Might. Similarly, they also have to make choices between AoE and single target later in the tree, and while these choices give Paladins flexibility, it does kind of hurt them a little bit compared to some of the other tank specs that don't really need to make choices like that. It's not all bad though, as you're able to grab things like Sanctified Wrath and Righteous Protector, extending and granting CDR to your wings, giving you great uptime on it and the buffs it provides, which is something previously that competed with each other. So that's really, really nice to have. Overall, the utility provided by Paladins cannot be underlined enough, and they've kept and even gained new strong synergies the spec relied on throughout Shadowlands, allowing Prot Paladins to be quite strong on both damage and durability fronts. From there, we've got Guardian Druids, who are finally getting some love on the beta after being neglected for several months. They've got multiple talent adjustments, as well as a massive 50% buff to all of their damage except for Moonfire. They've gained a decent bit outside of this when it comes to durability in Dragonflight as well. In particular, their self-sustain, which was less than impressive throughout Shadowlands, has been boosted significantly when it comes to both single target and AoE, and using Maul feels a lot better both offensively and defensively thanks to talents like Tooth and Claw and Vicious Cycle. The Disco Bear Moonfire playstyle has also made a return via the talent tree, so if you ever wanted to be a bear just mowing people down with laser beams, then now is the time to pick up Guardian. At the same time, you're also able to pick up previously competing talents like Incarnation and Soul of the Forest, as well as Earth Warden and Survival of the Fittest, which can be very nice. Utility-wise, they did gain a few things too, such as the Mark of the Wild versatility raid buff after the Wildfire for very high group healing through spending your rage, Nature's Vigil for even more group healing, but this time through damage done, and Innervate for healer mana, though this last one still isn't castable in bear form as of the current beta build, so hopefully that does get changed. Of course, they also have the full suite of Druid class utility as well. Typhoon for Nox, Mass Entangle, Nurse's Vortex, In-Cap Roar, Stampeding Roar, Soothe, lots of great stuff there. Damage-wise, they've jumped up from the lowest tank to near the top after these buffs, meaning they've got great damage, they've got great survivability and self-sustain, and all that Druid class utility as well, so they're just a very good overall option. That brings us to Vengeance Demon Hunters, who have gotten some pretty significant changes on the beta, namely a massive rework to the Frailty debuff, and some quality of life changes to how their souls work. Moving into Dragonflight, they've also kept some of the Legendary and Covenant effects, including things like Collective Anguish, reworked Dark Glare Boon, and 3 of their 4 Covenant abilities. They also have some nice combinations of talents now that they don't need to choose between, like some of the other tanks. So in this case, something like Soul Rending, Feed the Demon, and Fracture. All 3 of those are obtainable fairly easily. Previously, you could only get one. Big win for Vengeance there. In addition to what they kept, they also gained some of the previously Havoc-only utility. Things like Chaos Nova, things like Darkness, which alongside their Chaos Brand Magic debuff, and some of their other utility like Sigil of Silence, Imprison, and Purge, which give them a lot of general value. Personally, I think this spec is the best it's felt in a very long time. They have fantastic damage output both in AoE and single target, which is something they lacked a bit in Shadowlands. They still have that very strong self-healing, and if you're able to both layer your cooldowns and manage your frailty stacks correctly, they are extremely durable as well. Last, but certainly not least, we have the Protection Warrior, a spec that definitely felt neglected throughout Shadowlands, has risen up with a ton of returning tools and synergies that they've lost over the years. You've got Thunderlord combined with Booming Voice, Best Served Cold combined with Seismic Reverberation, and even the ability to take all 3 of your previous capstone abilities in Anger Management, Heavy Repercussions, and Bolster. Some nice new abilities also kind of fill in the gaps as well. They've got a new Pseudo Cheat Death in Battle-Scarred Veteran, a 1.5 minute cooldown that lets them block spells for 20 seconds, and Shield Charge, which kind of takes on elements of the Reprisal Legendary on a 45-second cooldown. All these things combined lead to warriors having extremely high shield block uptime, and when you account for other additions like the 10% passive leech they gain, or the Brutal Vitality talent plus their tier bonus, they're looking to be strong against magic damage intake as well. When you look at their damage output, they're also in an extremely good spot right now, and when they're not in danger, they have the ability to swap out of defensive stance into battle stance for even more damage. And if that wasn't enough, they provide both Battle Shout raid buff and the Rallying Cry raid cooldown, making them an asset to pretty much any group. Overall, they're shaping up to be an extremely solid pick in Dragonflight, which is definitely deserved after everything they went through in Shadowlands. But there we have it, guys. That's a quick rundown of the strengths and weaknesses of all 6 tank specs going into Dragonflight. As I said, tanks are looking pretty good across the board right now. Very, very weird feeling going into a first patch where tanks actually feel strong, but I am all for it. Which tank spec are you guys planning to main though? Please let me know down in the comments below. Like I said before, if you're looking for more in-depth info on these tanks, I have individual videos over on my channel and linked in the description below. And that update will be coming out shortly before Dragonflight's release, so be sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you do not miss that video. Also, if you have any questions at all, feel free to stop by my Twitch channel at Tactics, where I'm streaming beta keys every weekend. And once the expansion launches, I'll be doing High Mythic Plus as well as Mythic Rating from a tank POV, so be sure you check that out. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.